Whenever I look back at the things that helped shape my views growing up, I always look back at those animation TV blocks that introduced me to so many great cartoons. When it came to all the TV blocks that were out there, between Fox Kids, Teen Nick, Cartoons, and Nicktoons, there was always a special spot reserved in my heart for these two titans of the animation industry, Toonami and Adult Swim. One of these will be saved for its own video, but today, we're talking all about Toonami.
With an awesome power. It tells me to defeat you. I'll get rid of all of you, once and for all.
You want a real fight?
You will afford to lose. I'll do all I can to defeat you. Now! Shining finger! You're pathetic.
Only those with the courage to fight join me.
The late 90s into the early 2000s can easily be considered a golden era for animated TV shows, introducing some of the absolute GOATs of the industry. I mean, seriously, you really couldn't miss if you were an animated network executive in this era. In my opinion, this is in large part due to companies seeing this empty lane for a variety of cartoons. Before, cartoons tended to be a bit more, well, goofy. Even though we did have predecessors like He-Man, Johnny Quest, and the Thundercats, the market hadn't been explored much in terms of how serious you could take animation. Also, due to shows being broken up into exclusive girl-boy camps, there wasn't much room for emotional complexity or sensitivity in television in the previous eras. Shows also took after the models they had available, which is why shows like the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, and the Jetsons take after sitcoms, laugh track included in everything. The 90s sees a plethora of creators who were ready to push boundaries, whether they were social, quality of animation, sexual, or even the boundaries of what animation even was. This golden era saw all those borders and broke them, allowing animation to expand beyond anyone's expectations. Now that the stage is set for this golden era, we have to mention the major players, and everyone wanted a piece of this money mine. Cartoon Network was a relatively new competitor at the time in the United States. Originally starting in 1992 by Ted Turner of the Turner Broadcasting System, the fledgling company was a niche cable outlet for primarily a bunch of Looney Tunes reruns and Hanna-Barbera classic shows. In comparison to its main competitor, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network didn't have the original content to keep up with the growth spurt that Nickelodeon was having. On top of that, other established networks like Fox, ABC, and NBC were heavily focused on segmenting time for kids in animation on weekday afternoons and Saturday mornings. I cannot stress how big Saturday morning cartoons were in this era. These saw the launch of some huge shows we all know. Ever heard of Recess? What about Cat Dog? How about Rugrats? Pokemon? When I tell you that every one of these networks had not one, not two, but several bangers for shows that shaped the landscape for the future, I'm really selling you short. Marvel and DC both had multiple classic shows that are revered to this day. You had a laundry list of celebrities with successful shows. Even Jackie frickin' Chan had a classic. I didn't want to take too much time away from Toonami, but I felt like I could not understate the gravity of how many full-course meals we were being served to our adolescent minds. Now it's important to note that Toonami did have a non-anime start, dubbed the Motar Run, which consisted of shows like Thundercats, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, and originally aired the Powerpuff Girls, but we're focusing on the Tom era of Toonami. Now, back to the show. Now we can talk about what we're here to see. The GOAT of the golden era, the beast with the shows from the East, Toonami herself. When you look at the main thing that separates the lineup of Toonami from all the others, it becomes apparent rather quickly. All these shows are different than most of the shows on other networks. To a 10 to 14-year-old in the 90s, you can't quite put your finger on what this is, But you young whippersnappers of this era should have screamed out the answer like a 5-year-old watching Dora the Explorer. Yes, these are anime. Believe it or not, anime hasn't existed forever. Not only that, but it wasn't very popular on the West. Back in the day, the idea of violence in animation wasn't necessarily new, but it definitely was kind of taboo. Things like blood, excessive violence, nudity, and sexual content were reserved for weirdos that belonged in the back of paddy wagons, waiting to be electrified back into model citizens. Keep in mind, at this time, anime was not the sure shot as it is today, and these networks had to dedicate these prime time slots to these shows. Toonami was the only network at the time willing to take that risk. Playing it safe off the midnight run back in 2000, Toonami decided to air shows like Sailor Moon, Reboot, Robotech, Voltron, and Dragon freaking Ball Z. I mean, can you talk about this gold mine of shows that was mostly anime sitting at your feet? You would swear somebody came back with a time machine and said, "Look, you're sitting on a gold mine here. Use it or lose it. Anime's the future, you gotta catch up." Yeah, anime was that different. And Toonami found out before anyone else in the US that this wasn't just a game changer, it was the game changer. What can I say about our boy? The chillest machine this side of the Milky Way. The coolest voice in the game, Tom. Tom was a representation of what the future held. He was a robot, space traveler, anime lover, and voiced by the coolest voice in the game, Steve Blum. Tom and his AI Sarah were unique in the world of Host. Tom seemed like he was on a journey. What was he looking for? Treasure? Power? Fame? To the best of my knowledge, nah. Tom was just exploring for the sake of it. Tom spoke at the viewer a lot, making use of the words we and us. That was different from how most programs address their audience, especially kids. Tom was one of us. We were all part of the crew. Tom addressed us like friends. When we weren't faithful to him, we were all Toonami faithful. What does being Toonami faithful get you? Well, way more than one of the most amazing anime lists of all time. But you got heart from a 3D animated robot. Ever since the inception of the Tom era, Tom would give these speeches on the importance of life and its lessons. Lessons on anger, experience, individuality, perseverance, and even courage. These didn't come off as preachy either. It merely took the idea of these concepts, took a real look at what defined these things, put a positive spin on it. Tom was like the perfect older brother, wise and ready to teach, but still cool and introduce you to things he had already learned. He didn't frame things in a good versus bad mentality, rather from a here's this thing, and here's how you can use it in a positive way mentality. Those lessons felt inspirational rather than coming off as educational. When you look back at it, Tom has probably inspired many YouTubers by bringing the basics of existentialism and philosophy to the minds of the youth. Tom and Toonami didn't move with an agenda. They moved with a purpose. You can feel the crew at Toonami wanted to make Tom and Toonami something they could be proud of. From where I'm standing, mission accomplished, team. Even though Swaggy T piloted this ship, the crew at Toonami didn't just stop at making the coolest mascot ever. They had to introduce shows to you, and not to spare any expense, you were going to be introduced to these shows in the Toonami way. Man, these intros were some of the most hype, cleanest, and unique intros of their time. They centralized every show with the unique Toonami flair. The visual and audio clips from the show were fired off like a machine gun. landing back-to-back clips to build up hype and maximize on the epic moments that the shows had to offer. The additions from Tom, Sarah, and the deep voice announcer led to a symphony of sounds emanating from your TV. These things had you locked to your chair that even your mom's finest pizza bagels couldn't break that bond. If you grew up in this era, you knew what time it was when you heard "Allied to good, nightmare to you." Those words hit harder in the intro than they did in the episode. These were everywhere. The intros, commercial breaks, trailers, endings, transitions. You name it, there was a Toonami edit for it. This might be a bit of conjecture, but I really do believe that the Toonami roles inspired the anime music video community today. Speaking of just that, another good thing about these trailers that hit so hard was,
"You're gonna just keep running away?
Just keep running away? I'm not running."
as if introducing the West to real anime wasn't enough, the leaders of Toonami had to introduce us to a brand new world of music as well. What made this team so cool was their capability to take what some would call weird and make it amazing. This was a lot of our first time hearing music like jungle, drum and bass, breakbeat, alternative hip hop, and even ambient music, which would feel like a modern day lo-fi. That stuff influenced how most of Toonami faithful perceived music to this day, and it took the blinders off from just listening to what was on the radio and made you question, what the heck is this? They even used to do music video sessions back in the day, introducing us to artists like Gorillaz and Daft Punk. Most of us were not ready for the first time we heard Clint Eastwood, only to discover that this animated group had a whole freaking alternative album, mashing all genres together to make a banger playlist that has a spot on my Apple Music playlist any day of the week. When we talk about these guys being audio junkies, trust and believe we aren't getting around. Well, if you can't tell by now, I don't know what to tell you. From bringing us anime, teaching us life lessons, introducing us to making awesome AMVs, to showing us some of the dopest musicians in the world, Toonami's impact on its audience was far more than just some cash grab. This team put their soul into being the big brothers and big sisters that the youth needed in the world. They passed on the torch for the next set of creative minds to run with, which is why it remains in the minds of us fans. They talked to us on our level, showed us what the world had to offer, and thanked us for our time. Toonami will always feel like family for that reason. So from all Toonami faithful, we still love you, Tom. Now I leave the next part of the journey to you, the viewer. Take your love of something out there and turn it into something beautiful. Someone out there is gonna blow your mind with what they create. It leaves us on a journey of passing on a bigger and better flame to the next generation. We don't plan on stopping. Satisfied? I think not.